Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Playoff Push podcast. I'm your host, Jack Dobbins, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Major League Baseball insider and writer for USA Today, as well as an MLB Hall of Fame voter and the chairman of the Arizona chapter of the Baseball Writers Association of America, Mr. Bob Nightengale. How are we tonight?
Yeah, doing great, Jack. Good to see you.
It's great to see you as well. Of course, a very busy time in the world of Major League Baseball right now. On the way back from school, I saw you were able to report on the qualifying offers and how only Nick Martinez of the Cincinnati Reds accepted his. But pretty interesting seeing that teams such as the Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox will be getting draft picks in exchange for their players not accepting those QOs.
Yeah, as long as a guy gets over $50 million, you can get a draft pick out of it. And there's only been, this has been going on since 2012. There's only been 14 guys who've ever accepted it, so it's very rare.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the Yankees losing Soto and the Mets losing Sevy, two of the big names. And of course, Nick Martinez of the Reds, the one guy who did accept it. I don't even know how he got the QO, if I'm being quite real with you. But I mean, hey, he's getting his money. Shout out Nick Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, he probably thought that, he might get a 2-year deal out of it, but not at 21 a year. Maybe 2 years on a club option. So yeah, 21 million is almost a no-brainer. And I think in the Reds part, it's like, hey, a lot of clubs say there's no such thing as a bad 1-year contract. So they're willing to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the few things that have been going on in Major League Baseball around this time. We'll get into the big Hall of Fame ballot thing later on the episode. I just want to start off with a little bit about you yourself. So, first off, my question is what inspired you to start with a career in sports journalism?
Yeah, I just always liked sports growing up, no matter what season it was. Love football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and of course, baseball in the summertime. So, yeah, just like playing all the sports, like watching them, read everything about them. So, yeah, it was I love baseball the most, but I love basketball and football too. I really did. And just, baseball created the best opportunity and ended up covering the Kansas City Royals, the Kansas City Star. That was my first baseball job.
And of course, now here you are at USA Today, arguably the lead writer for Major League Baseball. You're in the Baseball Writers Association. You're voting for the Hall of Fame. It seems like everything is going pretty well for you.
Yeah, it's been a long road. And yeah, started off, like I said, as a beat writer, Kansas City Royals, then with the Los Angeles Times, and then San Diego Padres, the Angels, the Dodgers, then USA Today since 1998. So yeah, it's been a fun ride.
It's amazing. It's so great. Of course, I'm pursuing sports journalism, particularly broadcasting, but this podcast is a career project for me to get my love for sports out there. And a lot of my friends who are also taking the sports journalism path listen to these podcasts. So we just love hearing from guys such as yourself as to how they got started and, any advice they may have to the younger people such as myself. So if there's one piece of advice you could give to an up and coming sports journalist, what would it be? I know we're hitting hard questions early.
Yeah, just hard work. I mean, there's no shortcuts. Even in my profession, who's lazy and who's the hardworking. The hardworking people are the best at their job. I don't know a single baseball writer you can say who's lazy. That's great at their craft. And get to know as many people as possible. I don't care if you're covering the high school team. Hey, get to know the groundskeepers, get to know the janitors, everybody. You never know. Who has what information, who can help along that line. It's a lot of times the best guys to know are the guys who rarely play, the bench players. I think in Major League Baseball, if you say a poll, who's the nicest guys, who the guys you like to talk to the most, it's usually the backup catchers.
Yeah, I mean, such as backup catchers. A few guys who I hope to get on the podcast soon, the Armentani brothers, if you heard of them, they made the DJ tracks for the Phillies postseason run this year, are graduates of my high school, and they got their start with the Phillies from Garrett Stubbs, who is a backup catcher. So, I can definitely see that from a perspective of those guys who came from my high school and now making it pop up in the majors.
Yeah, and just because those guys, nothing was ever given to those guys. A lot of hard work and everything else. But yeah, the backup catchers are great guys to talk to and stuff like that. A lot of them become managers too. So just fun guys, and it's fun too to just talk to guys. You don't have to have your notebook open or your microphone in front of their face, but just, talk. I mean, human beings like everybody else. And a lot of times just, build a relationship, before you start asking questions about whether it's going to be, on your podcast or newspaper, broadcast, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Like my high school team, we won the state championship last year. Shout out the Firebirds. But I love getting to know all the guys, especially the underclassmen, since I'm a senior now. Just being able to talk with them. I'm writing out questions. So prior to the season, I can have all this great info for the broadcast. That's like one of my big philosophies is getting to know everybody. Always introduce myself to the opponent's coach, some of the opponent's players, and just, want to be seen as, a positive force and help sports be seen in a positive light.
Yeah, that's the best way to go. Because a lot of times, I'll be at a game and just the home guys are covering their home guys. They don't go to the visiting clubhouse or go see the visiting manager or go visit the umpires or get to know a groundskeeper, that sort of thing. So, you're doing it right. Get to know as many people as possible, no matter what their, occupation is.
That's how it goes. So another question about, your job itself. How do you handle and pursue breaking news in this era of social media 24/7? You can post anything whenever you want. How do you go about getting those stories and letting the world know?
Yeah, a lot of it now is kind of dictated by the agents. I bet 98, 99% of stories now are by the agents. Hey, by the way, my guy just got traded, or typically, hey, my guy is signing. Don't use my name, but he's signing. So the clubs don't release that because if a guy flunks his physical, they don't want to be on the hook for it. And a lot of times you'll see those kind of trades being announced without the full scope, like, okay, who they traded for. So, it's different now with the 24/7 news cycle. It used to be more, kind of a lot more fun, where it's just the paper. So you break the story, and you'd have the story by yourself for about the entire day. Nowadays, you may have the story to yourself for about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, between, yourself and Tassin and John Heyman, just a ton of guys going for the same story.
Yeah, just say if you pick your spots, which ones you want to pursue the most or the hardest, that sort of thing. Obviously Soto now is the biggest story, just
Oh,
like Judge
easily.
was a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, just prior to this recording session, Jose Siri heading from the Rays to the New York Mets. So that was a pretty interesting trade, one of the first few of this offseason.
Yeah, it shows the Rays, don't want to, pay that salary with the salary arbitration, everything else. And yeah, he's a dynamic player, good extra outfielder. So yeah, nice pickup by the Mets. And I think the Rays saying, you know what, we want to shave some money, so let's dump the guy.
Funny enough, for Tampa Bay this year, their number one player on the payroll is the New York Yankees franchise, allowing them to play in George Steinbrenner Field down in Tampa. So now we have to wonder, where's that salary going to go? And are they truly pursuing Soto?
No, they're not pursuing. They're not pursuing. No. I mean, they're playing a minor league ballpark. They're playing, Yankees minor league facilities. So no,
Nah,
they're not.
yeah, I know.
They're
I
not
mean,
pursuing Soto. But they, yeah, even the 15 million that the Yankees, I think the MLB is actually paying it. But yeah, they've always
uh,
been cost effective, and they've been a role model. I mean, for this team to be good year after year after year, be in the playoffs and win the AL East, I think that's why owners like Hal Steinbrenner and Tom Warner and John Henry in Boston say, wait a minute now, if they can win with an $80 million payroll, we certainly don't have to have a $300 million payroll. If they're doing it right, how come we can't do it?
yeah, I mean, it sure seems like everyone's starting to pursue Soto. Jays and Sox already down, Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, and the numbers just keep tallying and tallying of people presenting to him. I've heard he loved the Red Sox presentation, especially.
Well, and that's the story out of Boston. It's almost like, I don't think we'll ever see like, oh, he was unhappy with the presentation. Everyone's going to report, oh, he was happy, he was blown away. It's almost like, when a guy has surgery, it's always successful surgery. You never hear, oh, unsuccessful
No,
surgery,
yeah.
50-50 coin flip. And some are just, finding out information. I don't think the Dodgers have any interest in signing Juan Soto. They just won a World Series without him. They don't need him. But yeah, hey, that could put some pressure on Teoscar Hernandez. Like, okay, if Teoscar Hernandez believes they might be interested in Soto, then they may say, okay, we'll sign for less than we wanted to stay with the Dodgers. And a lot of these teams too throw their name in the hat just to jack up the bidding, whether it's for the Mets, for the Yankees, or the Blue Jays. I think it comes down to one of the New York teams or the Blue Jays. I don't see any other team I don't completely dismiss the Red Sox, but I do dismiss everybody else.
Yeah, a whole lot of mind games in this whole Soto situation. Just teams trying to see well how they can manipulate it to see where he's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to raise the price up, so be it. I mean, I think the Yankees want to get Aaron Judge out of center field. You get him out of center field by not, signing Soto. Go get a Christian Walker at first base. Go get a
Yeah,
William Thomas. Go get a Alex Bregman. Spread that money around. I think the Mets would like to do the same thing. Get a Christian Walker at first base and spread that money around too. But if the owner wants him that badly, you're not going to say no. You'll still take him. Where if you're a Dodger standpoint, you say, wait a minute now, we just going to roll straight without the guy, and the team that scared us the most is San Diego Padres. Why were the Padres so much better without Soto than they were with him? So you don't know what Soto's going to be in a couple of years. Will he still be in right field or will he be a DH?
exactly. And of course, the big topic currently is the Hall of Fame ballot being announced, I believe, yesterday. So I'll have one more question before we get to that. And this is an interesting one. What's the most challenging story you've ever had to cover, and how did you approach it?
This going back the day with the steroid era. I think I was the first one to write about the steroids. Steroids were rampant in baseball. You had to get guys on the record. So I got guys, the general manager of the Padres, Tony Gwynn, Frank Thomas. There were so many guys like Frank Thomas and Ken Griffey Jr. bothered so much because so many guys were using steroids, and it's like, wait a minute, it's out of control. So this is back around a 95 era when everybody knew what was going on. It was like baseball's dirty secret, and nobody wanted to acknowledge it. So that was tough. It was tough to get guys to go on the record and acknowledge that their own peers, have been cheating all these years, and that it's widespread. It's probably over 50% of baseball at that time were using stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the steroid era, definitely a heavy hitting topic when you look at the all time baseball record with Canseco and McGuire and a ton of those guys. But heading into the Hall of Fame part with our first question, you've been pretty open in voting for steroid era players for the Hall of Fame, voting for Bonds and Sosa, and announcing your ballot over to the public just so everyone can know that. So, what's your philosophy on balancing on field accomplishments with controversies surrounding PEDs, and how do you differentiate your views from the rest of the baseball community?
Yeah, my line of demarcation is when steroid testing came into effect, which was what year was it? 2003, when they started testing for steroids. Before it was a wild, wild west. So, I mean, you had team executives encouraging players to use steroids, managers, coaches, that sort of thing, because those guys you wanted on your team. I mean, those guys trained right, ate right, got their sleep and stuff like that. Teams kind of like to have the steroid guys on their team because they were so dedicated to their craft. And so my thing was, once MLB put the implemented the system, and then you got caught, hey, you just cost your team, whether it's a half a season or 30 games back in the day. So you hurt your team before you're actually helping your team and helping yourself. So guys like Roger Clemens, a Barry Bonds, voted for those guys, time and time again, because there was no penalty. It's almost like, hey, there's no speed limit sign. Are you really going 55 miles an hour? No, you're not. If it's a substitute teacher in class, are you acting up? Of course you are. That's the way baseball was. So now, if you got caught and hurt your team by getting testing positive and getting suspended, I don't vote for you. So I've never voted for Manny Ramirez. Will never vote for Alex Rodriguez, so on and so forth. So if you got popped for steroids, I don't vote for you. And the guys that I was voting for never got popped or suspended a single day.
Yeah, that's interesting because, a lot of those guys are just the majority of the baseball community is like, yeah, Bonds and use steroids or whatever. But I think you're right with that. They never did test positive. So that's really what it comes down to when it comes to your ballot.
Yeah, it was a case where it was like I said, Wild Wild West. They didn't care. Nobody cared in baseball whether using steroids. And then once they started carrying and test positive, okay, if you test positive, you're going to hurt your team because you're getting suspended. Where you can argue all day long that Barry Bonds and all those guys helped their team winning. and there was no repercussions. So that's why I said it was a wild, wild west. I mean, there were so many guys. Yeah, there's a good 8 guys in the Hall of Fame right now. That use steroids and just never got caught, but they're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Wow. So that's an interesting way to look at it. So I believe Bonds fell just short a couple of years ago. I want to say he was around mid 60s in terms of percentage points. Does that sound right?
Yeah, maybe low 60s. Him and Clemens are about the same. But you're right. It's those guys are off the ballot. They've been on the Veterans Committee ballot once, didn't come close. So we'll see if they get in one day. I think it's going to take a current Hall of Famer to admit that he used steroids
Yeah.
to open the door for other guys. And like a guy like Alex Rodriguez is on the ballot now. Well, he has zero chance to get in. If Barry Bonds is to
Yeah.
get in, you can argue that Bonds is the greatest player since Babe Ruth. Nobody's going to get in. That was linked to steroids.
We can only hope because Bonds, I think, regardless of whether he took steroids or not, would have been a Hall of Famer. He still showed so much promise in those years with Pittsburgh in his first few years in San Fran that I think he was still easily on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, you can you talk to any Major League Baseball player that played with Bonds, played against Bonds, managers. It's his greatest ball player they've ever seen, and I agree with that. I've never seen anything like it. When he hit 73 home runs that year, he could have hit 95 home runs if he ever saw some pitches to hit. So, no, unbelievable talent, and as great as we're seeing guys now, nobody comes close to what Bonds did.
Yeah, he was fast. He could hit tanks. He could hit for power. A solid enough fielder. I think that's all the tools that you really need to make that push.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fabulous all-around player. I mean, so was Alex Rodriguez, fabulous all-around player. Clemens, one of the most dominant, right-handed pitchers we've ever seen. And let's be honest, I mean, Bonds was facing a lot of pitchers who were on steroids. Roger Clemens was facing a lot of hitters on steroids. I'm not saying it was completely equal field, but a whole lot more players were taking steroids than people want to admit.
Oh, 100%. So we're going to move on to our final non-current ballot question. But Scott Rowland and Todd Helton both made their Hall of Fame inductions in the last couple years, but neither of them were on your ballot in 2023. Can you share your thought process behind leaving them off your ballot and how you evaluated their credentials compared to the guys you did vote for?
I actually put Hilton on my ballot last year, 2023. I
Oh,
did,
did you?
but
I didn't see
that was
it.
the first time. That was the first time.
I guess I
And
missed that.
my thing was, hey, if Fred McGriff's not in the Hall of Fame, I mean, McGriff was a unbelievable player. I thought it was a crime that he wasn't on the writers' ballot in those 10 years. So it's like I'm not voting for Helton or any of his first basemen in the Hall of Fame until McGriff's in. Once McGriff's got in, I say, okay, I'm voting for Todd Helton. I just thought that Helton and Coors Field should have hit a lot more home runs, should have been a lot more productive. I mean, I think if Fred McGriff plays home games at Coors Field, he would hit 600 home runs. Rowland, very good defensive player. And I know third base is tough. If you start comparing him to guys like Mike Schmidt, George Brett, it didn't stack up. So he got in on basis of the defense. Great guy, great all-around player. I thought he fell just short. I'm not saying I wouldn't have voted for him. Probably would have voted for him before his 10 years was up, but I had not and when he got elected.
Yeah, I guess the Baseball Writers Association of America is lying to me because on the website it only says you voted for Beltran, Kent, Sheffield, and Wagner. Helton's name's not listed, so I guess I must have not
Okay,
done
yeah,
enough
no,
research
yeah,
to look for that.
the last year, but that was the first time I had voted for him.
Interesting. Okay, great. And what about Scott Rowland?
Yeah, I did not vote for Scott. Great all-around player. I thought he fell just short. Same thing as a third baseman. You want to see more hits. You definitely want to see more home runs or ribbies. Maybe get spoiled comparing him to George Brett or Mike Schmidt, that sort of thing. So great defensive player, great all-around teammate too. But I think look at he was barely even on the ballot when or barely stayed on the ballot when he first came on it. And then I think just kind of wore people down like, okay, look at the gold gloves. And I do think it's easier to get in the Hall of Fame now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think some people just vote for 10 guys just to say they vote for 10 guys. When, if you did that, you'd have 3,000, Hall of Famers in 10 years. That's not, that shouldn't happen. But yeah, so I think it's easier to get in now than it used to be.
Gotcha. So you just wanted to see more production when it comes to rolling.
Yeah, I like to see more. If you go by Halton Roland, I like to see more power from those corner infield spots. And
Gotcha.
Roland's good, and he didn't quite have the hit tool either. He had a lot of injuries and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But a fabulous guy. I mean, one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. So very happy for him. And I probably would have voted for Roland before his 10 years were up, but I had not to that point.
Gotcha. So do you think Arenado's on a good enough trajectory as to where he could be on your ballot in, say, 10 years' time or 12 years or whatever?
Yeah, I do. I mean, besides all the gold gloves, the platinum gloves he won, had tremendous power, a lot of offensive production. Obviously, he was at Coors Field too. That helped him as
Exactly.
well.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, so he's certainly on that path to do so. I mean, even if he fell off completely now, I think it would be close. I think he still needs to have a couple more good years to make it a slam dunk, but he's certainly on his way.
I totally agree. So now we're going to start heading into this year's ballot, not specifically who exactly you're voting for, but just your ideas on a few guys. How about we start out with Nolan Arenado's former teammate, Troy Tulowitzki, and Dustin Pedroia. I mean, two guys on this year's ballot, both had Hall of Fame caliber talents. I don't think anyone can deny that. But they had their careers decimated by injuries. So I want to know, how do injuries affect your perception of a player's Hall of Fame potential? And should voters place more it on longevity or peak performance?
I would say longevity. I mean, you want peak performance too, but if you're going by peak performance, you can put a Brett Saberhagen in. I mean, he won a couple Cy Young's award, and Johan Santana, that sort of thing. Del Murphy would have been in. And he's not in.
Yeah.
So I think Tulowitzki, nice all around player, very good, but just fell short. Was never quite that guy. Hall of Fame status. Dustin Pedroia, I feel for because the three World Series, great second baseman, one of the best all around competitors you've ever seen. But when he got injured in the with the Manny Machado slide, it kind of decimated his career. And his
Yeah.
numbers are just, are falling extremely short. I forget how many hits he has, but I want to say 2,100, 2,200 hits.
Yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, you want to see a lot more hits than that. So I think he'll stay on the ballot. I don't know if Tulowitzki will, but I think it'd be a long haul for Pedroia to get in.
Say they didn't have, those rough injuries. Do you think they both had the level of talent that you would want to see in a Hall of Fame ball player?
Yeah, and particularly Pedroia. I think Tulowitzki might have been an all-round more talented player, but Pedroia, just the gritty and
Yeah.
toughness he showed in winning 3 World Series in Boston. The World Series championships mean a lot. I think that will get Buster Posey in the Hall of Fame because of getting the 3 World Series rings with the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, you can use the same argument with the injury thing with Mattingly. Like, again, huge peak performance, just didn't have the longevity to get in. And I met Mattingly. He's an incredible guy. Just, it's so unfortunate how injuries can take these incredibly talented players' careers from them and not give them the credit that I believe they deserve from their talent.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know there were some questions even this summer about, okay, is Mike Trout a Hall of Famer? I believe he is. He's done enough. But for people to raise that question, it just shows you what injuries can kind of ruin a guy's legacy, that sort of thing, where he was on the path and putting up big numbers and people comparing him to what Pujols did. But yeah, the injuries hurt him. I don't think enough to keep him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But when guys have injuries like that, and when you're closer to 2,000 hits than 3,000 hits, it's going to hurt you in the Hall of Fame ballot.
Yeah, I think Trout's like one of the most talented ball players of the 21st century. And I just think without the injuries, he could be, relatively close to, say, 450 homers by now. I mean, I think if he didn't get injured as commonly as he did, he could be on a trek to an easy first ballot.
Yeah, I still think he may get in the first ballot. I really do.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, nobody put up numbers the first 10 years than Albert Pujols did. And Pujols kind of faded toward the end until the last few months of the final season. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt him getting in. But yeah, and I think it's going to hurt Trout getting in. I still think he gets in first ballot, but he's not going to be like a 99, 98% guy.
Yeah. Heading on to our next guy, I want to focus on, one of my favorite players of all time is on this ballot, former Seattle Mariners star Felix Hernandez. So, given his incredible peak performance years of 2009 through 2014, how do his stats shape up his Hall of Fame case, and do they provide enough of a base as to where he can get elected despite a lack of sustained success beyond those prime years?
I don't think so. I'd be shocked if he gets in. Just not enough wins. I mean, what hurt him was that win total was so low and he was so great. They weren't scoring runs for him. He'd have great seasons. He had 11 wins, 10 wins. That hurts him.
Yeah.
He had a great peak. You're absolutely right, Jack. But what just wasn't long enough. I mean, look at Mike Mussina. It took him 7 ballots to get in. He had like 270 wins. Tommy John is not in yet. Look how long it took Jim Cott. But I think just the win total and just those numbers are just too short.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of wins as a pitcher stat just because of how uncontrollable it is. I mean, Jacob deGrom had one of the best pitching seasons we've ever seen, still finished the year with a losing record. But if the Mets gave him 3 runs of run support every day, I think he would have been undefeated. So it's just such a corrupt stat to me. I really don't like it, but I think it's big enough as to where it will hold Felix back, despite being maybe a top 3 pitcher for that 5-year span.
Yeah, but like I said, 5 years wasn't a 10-year span where
Yeah.
Johan Santana dominated too. And I don't think he's a Hall of Fame pitcher, but he was unbelievable.
Yeah, same
Uh,
case.
that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying about wins, but you talk to starting pitchers, they'll tell you wins mean everything to them. Greg Maddux said nothing meant more than the win. You outpitch the other pitcher and go deep. You can't get wins unless you go deep in games, and that's why I think people devalue them because we're seeing pitchers not going 7, 8, innings to get those wins. Like a Jack Morris used to. Those type of guys.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that in the future that whole win argument could be a knock on Jacob deGrom, or do you think he's a good enough ball player as to where that can be overlooked and just look at everything else and say this is one of the best pitchers we've seen in a while?
Well, what's going to hurt him more than the win total is just the lack of great seasons. I mean, when have the Tommy John surgery and miss years like that, right now you say no chance for a Hall of Fame. He'd have to stay
Wow.
for another 5 or 6 years. It's just not enough. Going back to Johan Santana, that sort of thing. If you want to go back to Felix Hernandez, some marvelous seasons, some dynamic seasons, but he needs a number of good seasons, before his career is over to get into the Hall of Fame.
So longevity really is everything, huh?
Yeah, it's just too short. Too many guys can have great, short careers, and is doing it for a long period of time. I mean, that's why you got to be in the major leagues for 10 years to even be eligible for the award. So yeah, deGrom was spectacular for that. But I mean, say when you just signed with the Texas Rangers, he hasn't done anything for Texas Rangers. That stuff all counts. Robbie Alomar is the best second baseman I've ever seen, but he hit a wall there in New York. It's like, wait a minute now, the sort of thing. So the best if you can just sustain it as long as you did, like a David Ortiz. I mean, he sustained that thing and it was just as good toward the end of his career as he was in the middle of it. But you can't just drop off a cliff like deGrom has so far. He needs to stay healthy.
How about a guy that's the definition of longevity? CC Sabathia getting his start on the ballot. 251 wins, over 3,000 strikeouts, and a Cy Young. Do you think that durability over 19 seasons is enough to solidify a case in the Hall for the big boy himself?
I do, Jack. I think he's in. I know a lot of people disagree, so now it's going to take some while. I would say years ago that might be the case, just like we pointed out with Mussina and those guys. But he was a dominant guy, always a workhorse. And what pushes him over the top to me is when he was a free agent, got traded to a Milwaukee Brewers. He knew he was going to be a free agent in 2 months. He, volunteered to go short rest. I want to say 4 or 5 times in the month of September, risking his whole livelihood to help the Brewers into the playoffs. To me, that's the definition of a Cy Young winner. You're sacrificing your body and stuff like that to get in, and always was a consistent winner. I mean, he was absolutely dominant there with Cleveland. He broke in. It was still outstanding for the Yankees.
Not only is he a great ball player, he's an amazing teammate, a fan favorite. CC's everything you want in a starting pitcher, a guy the fans can love, a guy the management can love, and a guy the team can love.
Yeah, great teammate, and he's the type of guy a lot of starting pitchers don't want to talk the day they pitch. CC would invite you over and start talking about football or basketball or something like that. He treated every day as the same, whether he was starting or not. I think his feeling was, hey, if the position players can talk every day, certainly the starting pitcher can too.
One of the coolest things about CC for me, I'm assuming you've seen this clip before, where he was with the Yankees and he needed a few more innings to get a $500,000 bonus. And one of the Yankees batters, I forget who, was hit by a Tampa Bay Ray pitcher. And instead of going those few innings for the bonus, he drilled a Tampa hitter right back, walked off the field after being ejected, and still got his bonus. And I just love that clip. It makes me love CC more and more every time I see it.
Yeah, tremendous competitor, and like you said, always had his teammates back. I think my favorite one was going to his house one year before the playoffs, and he went with his son to play a Pop Warner football game. And some guy on the sideline walked up to him and said, "Hey, did anybody ever tell you you look like CC Sabathia?" And CC said, "You're kidding me! I haven't heard that before." And that was it. The guy had no idea it was CC Sabathia.
I feel like that's something I do. I love, I see these guys on TV all the time, but I guarantee you I've probably missed someone at some point with how much I walk around those stadiums.
Exactly right. Yeah, where guys go incognito when it's airports or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think CC has a good enough chance to get in? You think you might sketch him in?
Yeah, I think he gets in. I think Ichiro Suzuki, obviously, he
That was
should
my
get
next guy. That was
should
my
be
next guy.
yeah, should be unanimous. I think CC gets in, and I think Billy Wagner gets in. I think
Sweet.
those three only.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you think Ichiro has a chance to be unanimous or at least get over 95%?
Oh, he should be unanimous. There's no reason that he shouldn't be. Over 3,000 hits. If you count, hits in Japan, over 4,500 hits. He could hit
Yeah.
30 a year if you want to, sacrifice his batting average. Great teammate, great all around player. But no, he deserves to be 100%. But yeah, he's hopefully he gets that. I think it'd be a great honor for him to be the first position player to get 100%.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best pure hitters in Major League Baseball history. Just being able to hit for so long from Japan to the major leagues, of course, eclipsing that 4,000 hit number, which is absolutely incredible. Just shows the longevity that guy had. And of course, that's the word of the episode, longevity. And that was what Ichiro strived with. I mean, just getting hit after hit after hit in New York, in Miami, in Seattle. He did it everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, he was unbelievable in Seattle. Just what he meant, and he was the modern day, Rock Carew, modern day Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs. I mean, just an unbelievable pure hitter. And you look at him now; he could still play if he wanted to. Well, I think he wants to, but if somebody gave him a shot, I mean, he still looks great. He still plays all the time and plays in women leagues and helps them out. And yeah, great all around guy.
It's unreal how Seattle still has yet to win a World Series title when they've had Griffey, Martinez, Ichiro, and you can keep going about all the talented players they've had. Randy, I mean, even Mark Langston. Like I think he was a Yankee killer. I'm a Yankee fan, if you can't tell. But I mean, they've had so many great ball players, and it's just so crazy how they've never won a title despite having all this talent and all these Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kept Lou Piniella of the Hall of Fame. He's come twice within one vote, but just like you said, it's like, wait a minute, how this team never make the World Series when you had that kind of talent?
Yeah, exactly. And I have one final question relating to this ballot. Is there a player on this year's Hall of Fame ballot who holds a personal significance for you, similar to when you were one of two votes for LaTroy Hawkins in 2021? If so, who is it and why?
There probably isn't. I mean, I would like to see CC Sabathia get in first ballot. Really enjoyed him over the years. Never got to know Billy Wagner that well. Got to know Ichiro. But yeah, up and down the ballot, it wasn't one guy. The one guy that's off the ballot this year, I would have said Gary Sheffield, if you asked me a year ago.
Yeah.
I think it's a crime he's not in. I think he deserves to get in. Outside Bonds, I think he's the most spirited hitter there was of his generation. So he would have been that guy. I voted for Sheffield every single year, and I
Yeah.
think he's a Hall of Famer.
I noticed that when I was doing my research of your previous ballots, which is actually really interesting to see the numbers of who voted for who on that little list. I think it's super cool doing the research for this episode.
Yeah, so I'll probably vote 4 or 5 guys this year. Really, during the steroid era, there was a lot of guys who I thought were deserving, but not so much now.
Yeah, I know about that LaTroy Hawkins story, but for the people who don't know, you want to explain why you put him on your ballot in 21?
Yeah, I mean Hawkins, known LaTroy since he was in the Minnesota Twins days, a class act. Hey, when you pitch 20 years in the big leagues, you're doing something right. And I just thought he deserved recognition. And I know the other guy who voted for him. He asked me, "What do you think about voting for LaTroy?" And I said, "I am." He said, "Okay, I will too." And but yeah, just when I was breaking in covering the Kansas City Royals, my guy was Hal McRae. I think it's still
Yeah.
the greatest clubhouse leader I've ever seen. I wasn't eligible yet to vote for the Hall of Fame. And then when the ballot came out, I saw nobody vote for Hal McRae. I was crushed by it. I never asked him about it, but I said, "Oh my God, he deserves at least one vote." And always stuck with me. And so even LaTroy's last couple of years there, and I know people can scrutinize and stuff on social media. Yeah, do I think LaTroy Hawkins is a Hall of Fame player? No. Is he a Hall of Fame person? Absolutely. So I say, you know what? I'm not taking his vote away. I want to give him, that satisfaction that he can say, one day to his grandkids, "Hey, I got Hall of Fame votes."
Yeah, I mean that's great. I mean, just having those guys that you can connect with and be able to put on that ballot just as a thank you for all you've done for the sport. I think that's so great.
Yeah, just a wonderful human being. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah.
My last quick little question before we sign off for the episode. Another Hall of Fame person, probably the biggest guest on this podcast up until this episode we're recording right now, Curtis Granderson. Do you think he'll get any love at all? Do you think he has enough of the stats or personality to get any votes?
I think he'll get some votes. I do. And a fabulous guy. One of my favorite guys to cover. One of my favorite guys now off the field. Tremendous person. And, he was great there with the Tigers
That was
for a while.
incredible.
Helping. And, yeah,
I
great.
got to ask him a few questions for an episode about a month ago. It was incredible.
Yeah, yeah, great, great guy. I mean, he would be like, we're talking about Latoya Hawkins, like, okay, he'd be that type of guy too. But I do think he'll get some votes.
That's great to hear.
I don't
That
think
makes
he'll
me
get
happy.
5% to stand the ballot, but I do think he'll get votes.
That makes me happy. That makes me really happy.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very big time for baseball. I believe the Hall of Fame ballot is in a couple months, if I'm remembering properly.
Yeah, you got to turn in December 31st.
Oh,
The
wow.
ballots are
Yeah.
due December 31st. And I think it's Tuesday, January 21st, I believe.
Yeah. So your final prediction for who's getting in is going to be Ichiro, Billy Wagner, and
CC Sabathia.
and CC. So
Yeah.
those are your three, your final prediction?
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a fourth. I think we'll three. Wagner's last year the ballot. Usually last year, guys thing got spikes up. He only
Yeah.
missed by 5 votes.
He
But I
definitely
really
deserved
believe
it.
that gets it. I know some people disagree. I think he gets in a lot easier than people think it will. I think he'll get over 80%.
Love it. All right, that's going to be it for episode 24 of the Playoff Push podcast. Again, Mr. Nightengale, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And that's going to be it here for the Playoff Push podcast. I'm your host, Jack Dobbins. Thank you for tuning in and have a great rest of your day.